I've got the Apollo 12 TV schedule.
And I wanted to show this one, and there's one more in here that I want to show.
TV deployment, Apollo 12, antenna deployment area.
Yeah, it's not that, it's what's underneath it.
EVA ground elapsed time.
Yes. How can that be in there? They have the exact distances down and the exact time already in the press kit.
Well, of course, you realize that NASA are psychic. They can not only tell the future, they can tell you what time it is and how far away it is.
Well, you can see how well planned it was, the TV schedule, because they have the ground elapsed time is there and the TV schedule's there for Eastern Standard Time. And of course, that is exact. That's exactly what happened. Didn't matter when they took that rocket off, as long as they got it off that day, they'd be okay, because they're going to follow that schedule.
Presumably that's the camera on the right, 300 feet away from the lunar module.
Yeah, they knew exactly how far these guys were going to walk out there and do it, right?
Yeah, they must have had a big tape measure to measure 300 feet. It's not 300 inches, that's for sure. That'd be about 5 or 6 feet. No, a bit more than that. But it's very well planned, isn't it? Very well planned.
And here's one more. There are more than just these ones as well, though. There's 4 or 5 pages of just this last one here.
It's interesting that they can put all this information so accurately before they took off.
Months before they took off.
I mean, ground elapsed time, 244 hours, 11 minutes, separation. 15 minutes later, entry into phase. That's when they hit the atmosphere at 400,000 feet, 50 or 60 miles up. 36,129 feet per second. That's fast.
They knew that right down to the exact number that they were traveling as well, right? Because if it wasn't at that speed, they wouldn't get there on time.
No, you wouldn't. And you'd miss the ship waiting to collect you. They're talking about timing to the nearest minute. You can travel quite a long way in a minute when you're traveling at 6,000 miles an hour.
You can read all these documents and they look great until you examine them and see what's in there and what can't possibly be in there.
Well, it said that they could align it with the TV schedules to show the commander, CDR, commander, steps onto surface at 6:09 a.m.
They must have been under an awful lot of pressure to get that rocket off the ground on time.
Absolutely. You've got to get the rocket off the ground on time. You've got to orbit on time. You've got to do everything on time.
Imagine if they were a day late.
Well, no, it's a good thing that they knew what time they had to do it all at.
Yeah, but what if they had a problem with the rocket and it actually couldn't take off that day? Then the press kit, everything is all crap.
Exactly.
Look, they were sending probe after probe after probe after probe, one right after the other. And they all landed, or they all made it, except for the ones that they crashed purposely, so they said.
How many surveys did they put up? 7?
Remember the other ones they put up before that? That funny-looking satellite? They sent, I don't know how many of those up before the surveyors came along. What were those probes called?
Ranger.
Ranger!
Yeah.
Yes!
Yeah, there are about 5 or 6 of those.
Yeah, and there were 7 surveyors. They didn't have any problems. Russia is, how many do they have? 15 of them or some damn thing?
Yeah, quite a lot.
Yeah, I think there's about 15 of them.
Yes, it was. Lunar 15. I think they're now up to about Lunar 24, 25, because the Russians all keep the same name. America changes the name.
They have to, because they can't sell it if they don't change the name.
What we're talking about now is the Surveyor program. Now, it consisted of 7 unmanned lunar missions that were launched between May 1966 and January 1968. Then we take the Surveyor probes that were launched after this. Every single one of those probes accomplished their mission but one, that something happened to it. 9 Rangers were launched from 1961 through 1965. The first 6 attempts failed, but beginning in July 1964, Rangers 7, 8, and 9 successfully completed their 65-hour journey to the moon by transmitting television pictures of the lunar surface during the final minutes until their impact there. Yeah, so that means that the first 6 failed, but after that, they all succeeded.
I looked at the details of doing a translunar injection and what it takes to do that. how did these vehicles manage to get there? And like, never mind landing, but they actually crashed, right? They actually made it to the moon and crashed. This is what they're claiming. So how come Apollo needed to make course corrections on the way? If Ranger got there and actually hit the moon, they crashed on the moon, so they made it to the moon. How come Apollo needed to make course corrections on the way?
Well, don't forget that, but they had little retro rockets that were firing. They said that those were computer controlled, but they weren't controlled by the computer on board the craft. Those were controlled by the computer back at NASA. And then they sent the signal to fire those retros to course correct it as it was going. That's what they claim here. The computer's doing the calculations on Earth, and then they're just sending the radio signal up, which means that they're going to have the timing right bang on, too, because it's going to be a delay. So they have to take that into consideration. Because when that retro has to fire, like for the course correction, it's going to take 1 minute and 6 seconds to get there.
Then you need a computer to tell you what course you're on to make the correction. It has to send the information back.
Well, I guess they used their super telescopes for that.
You can make a course correction, but if you don't know where it's going, how do they know which direction it's going after they make a course correction? I'm just looking at the burn times here. To a desired burn time of 30.59 seconds. That's pretty exact. And if you're going to be that exact, you also have to calculate in how far away you are and how long it's going to take the signal to get there. And is that thing going to fire up to full efficiency instantly or not? How long is it going to take for it to get up to speed? It gives the pressure when you pull up to here. This is the motor design here. That's the propulsion system. Right here it says 50 pounds of thrust. They only had one correction. It's only capable of doing one correction. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It is.
This is what Robert and I were looking at, was this little detail here. All the stuff for the cameras.
Yeah, those Vidicon tubes back in those days, I mean, I remember they used 6 volts just for the filament.
Plus, then you've got all the electronics, the combiners, the sequencers, all of the stuff, and all you see is a little battery here and a little battery there for all of this.
But presumably they tested that layout to make sure it worked.
It just
Hopefully
shows,
they tested it in a vacuum chamber.
they're just showing the batteries here at a regulator. Then your camera sequencers, transmitters, camera electronics are here. So this entire vehicle is nothing more than cameras.
TV subsystem configuration. So it's all TV stuff. Obviously not digital.
Well, they'd have to have the cameras, the slow scan, right?
Yeah, Vidicons.
Yeah, 6 Vidicons. And that's what Robert's saying, the amount of power that those things are going to draw.
They would. But they're quite large pieces of kit as well.
Yeah, well, this is not a very large machine. The camera electronics are here, the transmitters are here, the sequencers are here. The whole thing is a camera, or 6 cameras combined together with a battery pack and whatever. I don't see anything on this machine to control where it's going.
That's a good point.
There's got to be more equipment on there. It's got to be a whole lot bigger than just a bunch of TV cameras. They were running from Goldstone as well. It's on the side.
Yeah, Goldstone. So that's where it's been controlled from. And presumably from Madrid and Australia as well when it went out of range.
Oh, there was quite a few stations that were picking this up as it was going around.
Earth's shadow temperatures in here. Like that must be just when it's orbiting the Earth.
Earth shadow, yeah, it would be.
I really think what they should do is go back and have a look at these Ranger craft and then send those back. Like just make some of them and send them back because they were less complicated and they made it there just about every time. All this was doing was just making the course correction. I mean, if again, they were just sending this after they did all the calculations on Earth and they sent it, they did its course correction and that was the end of it. It sure hit the moon accurately.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Where's the communication with it constantly to guide it in there when it needed it for Apollo? And they weren't trying to do anything technical. It's just going to crash into the moon, right?
Okay, then Surveyor 1. Then it was the first Surveyor, the Surveyor
It's first
probe.
soft landing.
Oh, okay.
That's why it's called Surveyor Crater. That's where Apollo 12 landed.
Oh, you mean the Surveyor that was in the dark and then all of a sudden it was in the light again?
That's the one. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the one they flew directly over. They were showing how accurate their landing capabilities were by being able to target Surveyor 2 and land beside it and go and pull the camera off of it. They just showed cutting the cord.
Back to square one, guys, and start again. I wonder how those Artemis astronauts are thinking now. They can't even get an unmanned craft to land on the moon. But how are they going to get us there? Oh, dear.
If I was them, I would be very scared.
Would you get on an airplane if there was one crashing every day?
Never mind that. I wouldn't get on the aircraft if there was just one pilot. And that's what they had on every Apollo mission.
But just compare it to aircraft. And there are thousands of aircraft in the air at any given time, any time of day or night. Literally thousands of them out there. If there was a plane crash, a commercial plane crash every day, would you get on one?
No.
Okay, well, they just seem to be crashing everything all the time here. Why would anybody get on the Artemis craft and say we're going to the moon?
Well, they probably won't.
Why would they even let anybody get on a rocket and take off into space?
Well, that's why they haven't done it yet. All the unmanned rockets seem to disintegrate. Not very clever.
I thought this was interesting. Raza sent me a video, I believe it was off of Moonfaker's channel. And what was interesting about this was that when you're looking out of the LEM, it looks like there's a number 10 on the lunar surface. Now, what we did was we pulled two other videos up and we took a look at the bottom of the window. So right now what you're seeing is out the window, let's just say. So what you're seeing is this retro rocket here. But if you look at this other video, it looks like it's the number 10 sitting on the lunar surface. If you look at this video, you can see that it does look like a number 10. But there's your top retro that's overexposed. And there on the left is the side retro, which is overexposed, and the sun is shining on it. But it's quite interesting that how it does look like it is actually on the surface. But what happens is because the camera is supposed to be mounted in the window, it's not. This astronaut or whoever's taping this has the camera in his hand. And so that's why it appears like it's on the lunar surface. But when you actually look when he's moving at the bottom of the window, you could see the retros going up and down and up and down. And when you take a snapshot like this, now you can see the retro clear as day.
Okay, just play the sequence through for everybody and watch the edge of the window.
And you see these two lights or three lights that are going up and down. That's a reflection in the window. That's what you're seeing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right there, that is actually a reflection in the window. Those are the lights inside because he's holding the camera and moving it around. So that's where you're getting that from. Now, if the camera was mounted in the window, you wouldn't get that.
No, you wouldn't see that at all. But now you're going to see the edge of the window when they come in here.
And there's your retro.
Yeah. They're going to pull it back a bit. There's the window edge there, the first time you're seeing it. But the camera's moving around. You can see it move forward towards the window there. And then you're seeing that. And I don't know why they have created this with a round effect on the entire camera itself, right? It's not square, it's round.
Yeah, now watch this one here. You can give you play-by-play of what's happening because what I'll do is this time I will stop it so that you can see where that reflector is. Now, I'll go very slow.
As you can see, the camera is sitting farther away from the window at this point. You can see the edge of the window going along and then up on the side, and you can just see the little tiny corner of the reflector. And as he moves the camera forward, you're going to start to see the little retros on the side there. But watch the edge of the window as it's moving forward. He's moving the camera to the window. So now you can see down farther onto the retros. And that's why it looks like a number 10 if you're not aware that there's pieces of equipment outside of the window. And basically there, the window has completely disappeared and they're using a rounding effect on the camera lens.
But unless you were to actually take this, roll it back, and start right here at the edge.
Yeah, that's when you see the full window.
And now you can clearly see the retro.
Yeah, it's that window. As the camera moves forward, the edge of the window disappears. So you can see farther down the machine. Easily could be mistaken for any kind of anomaly outside the window if you're not aware that there are pieces of equipment outside the window. And that's what's happening here.
And because the sun is striking this on an angle from the top, not only from the top, but it's also reflecting on that mylar material that's outside the lem, and then it's reflecting onto the top of the retro. That's why it looks like a zero, because it's overexposed.
Yeah, and let's have an example of one of the outside of the Apollo as a comparison here. Like this is a little different lighting, so the one that's on its side, you're seeing the whole thing. But the one that's out the window, all you're seeing is the top on them. And depending on what mission it is, some of them are more blackish on the side. Some of the models that you see in the photographs are darker with a chrome ring on the end of it. These are just shiny all over, and you're just looking purely at the end of it reflecting off of there. So whatever the camera picks up out the window is not an anomaly, a UFO, any kind of a marking that NASA would have put on there. It's just a piece of equipment.
And then one last thing that I would like to address is these reflections in the window.
That's coming off the people inside. If you look closely, I think you could probably enhance that and bring their bodies up even better than that.
So this is not the Big Dipper, and there's no balls or anything there on the surface.
Nope.
These are just reflections from their flight suits.
However, if it was done for real, those astronauts would be incredibly busy. They would not be hanging onto a camera. Those cameras were solidly mounted in the windows. There's lots of images showing the mounting of the cameras for the windows, the DAC camera, and any of the other cameras that they were using there at the time.
But something else that is important to note is that these astronauts are supposedly going around that moon at 6,000 miles an hour. Why are they stationary?
At
They're
60 miles up, you definitely see the movement.
Yeah, and I'll prove that because here, when we go and look at this, we can see the moon flying by.
Yeah, that's what it should look like. Yeah, the different simulation with different effects.
Oh, and it is a simulation, by the way.
That particular is quite easy to spot. They're all easy to spot because they're all simulations.
But look at how good it looks.
1966 they did that, right?
Yeah.
They had the simulators up and running by 65.
But people say you can't fake it. Look at this.
And that's a very different window as well in the simulator there.
So much for the camera being mounted where it's supposed to be.
That's pretty incredible. I mean, most people would miss that when you're looking at the fact that the camera should not be moving. I mean, It's a subtle movement, but what it shows is that as it moves up to the window, you're now seeing the retro rockets outside the window, that's all.
It is easy to mistake this. It is.
Like if you want to believe that there's UFOs or other anomalies flying around on the moon, I mean, anything that's outside of the window becomes a UFO, right?
Once again, we're back to the Lola simulator where the light is inside of that globe.
That's about the same as the Apollo 15, where they claim it was an alien spaceship and it was the sunlight coming off the top of the mountain. And you just see the little piece at the top on it. And you think as they're riding along on the rover, I mean, it's just a background image there that they're driving by on. But as it's moving and bouncing along, it looks like there's a spacecraft going because it's just a little peak of the mountain.
Yes. You can see what happens when a situation like this is how you can start going right off track and then derail yourself, especially when you're going and you're trying to look for something that isn't really there. And those dots are now the constellations because He's saying that there are silver balls, I believe, that are actually on the surface to mark them.
Could be just buttons on the front of a suit.
That's right, yes.
Because we don't know what's behind that camera exactly. You don't know how these people are dressed. I mean, it is a simulation. I mean, it could just be a camera guy with a white suit on. He's got buttons on him. You can't see enough of the reflection of the person behind the camera to tell exactly how he's dressed. But the image you're looking at is no different than any other simulation that they have freely displayed on Periscope films. All the simulation videos are there while they were practicing. You see them getting into the simulator, you see the image that's being provided for them in front of them in the simulator, and you see them practicing with their controls, and they even do it in slow motion, which is incredible. While they're in the simulator, they're moving their hands in slow motion. I think it's hilarious because they aren't practicing the equipment, they're practicing the simulation. They're practicing to try and make it look like they're on the lunar surface. So they told these people to slow their movements down like they're floating in space, but they're just in a simulator.
Sure. Why would you need to do that if you're in a simulator? Are they planning to use this at a later date?
They're doing that when they're dressed in a t-shirt and his sunglasses are sticking in his pocket. I mean, they're not dressed for anything. They're in the simulator. So why are they practicing slow motion movements? They're practicing to fake it. That's a pretty good way to describe it, because there's no other reasonable reason they should be sitting there with technical binders in front of them discussing each part of that equipment that's operating in front of them. That's what they should be doing. And they should have an instructor right at the door there or on a headset right outside them to give them the full instructions on what's supposed to be happening in the simulator. They're showing the footage of their simulation that they created from either their big large balls or the big panels of the lunar surface that they've created to stick in front of them. They're practicing to fake it.